I have a couple pro tips for you all who are really into this idea of freelancing and think it's something you'd actually like to do to try to make some money, either trying to do it eventually full time or just something on the side. Now, last time we talked about freelancing, we talked about how to actually break into it and do it, how to bring up the idea of getting paid for your work, how to negotiate prices, how to make a contract and an invoice system, how to keep track of everything, and even how to pay your taxes, which is actually kind of exciting, even though it's not really at all. What we're going to talk about now is just a handful of small tips, some small suggestions I have that'll help make being a freelancer go pretty smoothly for you. Now, one that is super important off the bat, this is something you've been told a lot in journalism already, but now I'm emphasizing it even more for photojournalism, and that is have a portfolio website. You should probably already have one of these, but if you don't, you need to make one, and you need to host your photographs on it, and you need to pick photos that exemplify the kind of work you do and the kind of work that you're really talented at and the kinds of things you're willing to do to get paid. You can find really great templates for photojournalists and photography portfolio sites on stuff like Squarespace, something like Wix.com. These are both template sites for websites. You can either go for free or for a handful of dollars a year, you can make a really great looking portfolio site for your work. You can't click on these because this is a video, but I'm going to drop the links in the Canvas site of some really good photography websites for both Squarespace and for Wix. You can totally go look at ideas for layout and stuff for portfolios that way, as well as a link to a photographer who I really respect and I really like their layout site as well. So I think it's a good idea to put your photos there in a really user-friendly way. It lets people click through the photos and see them. They can get captions and contextual information so people know the kinds of stuff you're good at. Maybe you're really good at nature photography, or you're really great at sports, or you're just really talented at indoor stuff. Like, let's say you're great at making kind of boring meetings look really great by taking pictures of them. Whatever it is that you're specialized in, you want to emphasize that on your site. But what you don't want to do is put really high-res versions of your pictures up on your site to be downloaded, because inevitably, if you do this, people will steal them. Next thing you know, you'll find a website that has your photograph on it without crediting you at all. And that's a bummer, because the whole reason that you're doing this freelancing thing is to get paid. Which means that you need to protect your intellectual property. You need to go out of your way to make sure that you are protecting the work that you are putting into all of this. And that's a little bit hard to do sometimes, or it's not something we think about a lot, because a lot of us have sort of come from an era where people take stuff on the internet. The internet is one big, sort of bowl of theft sometimes, what with starting off with Napster and then having LimeWire and then everyone stealing stuff via BitTorrent. And now there's tons of ways to steal stuff. The internet just feels like it's made for stealing sometimes. But what you need to do is defend your intellectual property. You need to defend the stuff you're working on. So what I would suggest you do is every couple of months use a website called Tineye, Tineye. It is a big reverse image search for a good amount of the internet. Take a couple of your really popular photos. Maybe it's a good idea just to take the ones you think are the best and drop them in. And you want to see if anybody else is using your photographs without your permission. Now, let's say it pops up that a news agency is using your work without your permission. They've grabbed one of your photos and are using it on a news story. Or really anybody. We're just using a news agency here as a base example. You have one of two options. The first is the nicest way of doing it, which is to send them an invoice. Also, it's kind of the most passive-aggressive. You send them a bill that says, I see you're using my photograph. I charge money for them. Here's how much you owe me now. You can tell them, hey, if you have 2 weeks to pay, or you can take the photograph down, or you have essentially 2 weeks to pay, otherwise I'll get a lawyer. Most of the time then they take the photograph down and apologize. The second, the slightly less passive-aggressive but slightly more regular aggressive way of doing it is to issue a DMCA takedown notice. The DMCA is a piece of legislation called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It's the same reason why copyrighted material comes down off of YouTube. So if a copyrighted song is used inappropriately, YouTube will freeze the video. You have the same power as a content creator to issue DMCA takedowns of work that someone else has stolen from you. It comes in a template format like this. I'll post a version of the template to the Canvas site for you all to get. But essentially you insert your name and company title and you insert the website that you are issuing it to. You send it to them and it gives them a certain amount of time to take the stuff down. Otherwise they are in violation. It's a good idea, in order to prevent all of this from happening to start with, to develop a watermark for yourself. Have something that you could put on your photo to clearly identify it as yours. Back when I was doing photography work, mine looked like this. It wasn't great, but it was mine, and I was proud of it. This is another link you can't click on now, but I'll toss into the Canvas site, but it's essentially a very step-by-step way you can use either Microsoft Word or PowerPoint to very quickly drop a watermark on your image. For anything you may post to the internet, it's a good idea to put the watermark on it. Put some thought on how you're going to put the watermark on the image itself. Do you want to splash it over the middle in order to be really, really careful about it? The downside being that it may actually interfere with how good your photograph looks. It may make it less likely someone will pay you for it legally. However, if you put it on the bottom, completely out of the way, it makes it easy for people to crop it out and get rid of it completely. So if you're going to use a watermark, which I do suggest you do, put some thought into where you're going to put it. I like the idea of covering 1/4 of the photograph in the watermark. That makes it so that no one can really crop it, but it also doesn't get in the way of the quality of the photograph itself. Here's a really old school thing. Order some business cards. Yes, this is kind of an old-fashioned thing nowadays in that we all have smartphones, and if we want someone's phone number, we just have them type it in our phone. But in the photography world, these are still a really big deal. Business cards still matter. You want to exchange them with people that you're working with. You can find lots of websites out there that let you order just a pack of basic business cards for dirt cheap, like $8. You can get a whole bunch of them. Just go that route. You don't have to have anything super fancy, but what you just want is something that if you're out in the field and there's a reporter there, if you happen to run into an editor somewhere, if there's other photographers around, you want a quick way to be able to introduce who you are and how to give them your contact information very fast. Here's my card. It's nice to meet you. I'll stay out of your way. It's great talking to you today, and everything is done. I think it's a really good idea that once you get into the groove of this, once you start making some money from this, and I really believe that each and every one of you, if you were to follow these steps, can get paid for the work you're doing freelance. Once you start to get into the groove with it, and let's say you get really comfortable with one publication you're freelancing for, don't let the working for free thing creep its way back in. And it can happen like this. Let's say you agree to go cover an event and they're going to pay you $100 to cover the event with your camera. You're going to go take pictures of it. Is they call you up and say, hey, look, while you're out there, could you just do me a favor? While you're out there, just go ahead and grab a couple of shots of this cafe. We're doing a profile of this cafe, and you're going to be really close. You just stop by, grab a couple of shots. The problem is that creeps its way in, and next thing you know, you're doing a whole nother assignment for them for not any extra money. You kind of need to say no and say, that's fine, I'll totally do that. Let's renegotiate, or let's draw up a new contract, and I will totally be fine shooting that for you, but I do want to get paid for it. You do have to understand that even though there is money to be made in freelance photography, you have to be careful. You are walking a tightrope here. You may be incredibly talented, but you have no room to screw up. Screw up once and you can be done forever. If you're going to freelance, your captions have to be flawless every time. You cannot have any typos. You cannot have any fact errors. You can't have anything wrong with them. You need to hit every single deadline. You need to never be late. You don't get very many chances to make good on this. If you have an error in your caption that makes it a fact error, makes it something wrong on their end of stuff, if you miss a deadline, there's a lot of freelancers out there, and if they have the ability, they're going to go with somebody who can hit deadline. You need to walk a very careful tightrope here. Make sure that you are hitting every deadline. Make sure that you are acting very professionally, because at least in freelance work, you can be replaced easily. So hopefully you all take this to heart and you do some of this stuff. And I would really love to hear down the road that some of you have made some money off of freelancing your work. I'm really excited for you. I know this seems like a scary world out there for photojournalism, but it's actually because of freelancing, almost easier than ever to make money off of